There's something in the sport about the 100-miler. It's the marquee distance for ultramarathons.
4, 3, 2, 1, go!
I'm Jamie Hobbs. I'm 43 years old. I'm a dad. I'm a lawyer. I'm a public defender. And then I came to running from sort of a hiking and mountaineering background. Started to love the ultra-distance events as a way to get out deep in the woods on a daily basis in a place where we don't have a ton of mountaineering to do. Sort of surprised myself by wanting to do longer and longer distance races. First time I went to Hellgate was at the end of 2015. It had been my best year of ultra running at the time. First time I went above 50 miles, and I ran a 70-mile race and another long 100K.
Sorry. Jamie Hobbs, got the girl's name, you know? Yeah, that's right.
I did pretty well at them, surprising myself at them, but felt like I still had room to improve. And I wanted to try tough races in order to be as prepared as I could when I eventually made the jump to 100 miles. After a little bit of success in the 2 prior long ultras I'd done, I think I went to Hellgate with a little bit more expectations of what I could do and hoped to be competitive in a new race, a new community where I knew there'd be some challenges, some tough, fast people. Hellgate was my first exposure to the Virginia ultra community, and it seems like a tight-knit community down there. There's a lot of very good, experienced runners.
Nice job, man.
You did a great job.
Might have been a little hot coming up the hill.
Yeah, you're all.
The Hellgate scene is driven by Dr. Horton, who's a personality and a larger-than-life character. The race itself is unique because it starts at midnight, so you're running the first half of it in the dark through mountains I'd never seen before. So I have no idea what I'm running through or what views I'm missing. Hellgate's a December race in the Virginia mountains, so you can normally expect that it'd be pretty cold, potentially winter. There's stories of people with extreme cold and getting Hellgate eyes due to the running in the cold. But 2015 was a warm year, and started out in 40s or 50s, and by the end of the race was cropping up towards the 70s. So it was basically like a warm day in the fall. And that took a toll, I think, on a lot of people late in the race. The sun finally comes up, and you get to appreciate the Virginia mountains, and just when you're feeling exhausted and ready to be done. I ran pretty aggressively from the start to stay in the top 10. I was in 6th or 7th through the first aid station, running ahead of course record pace or something like that. I knew that was not going to be sustainable, but I just wanted to hang on. By mid-race, I was slipping back, and I was counting those positions up. I did manage to find myself back in the 10th place male. I was 11th overall after Bethany Patterson caught me in one of the last sections. And I battled with her a little bit coming down the last descent into the finish, but ultimately couldn't really sustain a steady finish and let her go. Finished a couple minutes behind her.
Nice job, Jamie.
I'd call it a success, but it wasn't, my perfect race by any means, and I was excited to go back, try it again. 2016 Hellgate was a different year for the race and a different year for me. After a solid, consistent year in 2015, I was battling injuries all year in 2016, and going back to Hellgate ended up being a decision to try to salvage a little something of the year, get something, at least one long ultra in. I knew I went down there without as much of a base under my legs and without as much great training, and just wanted to see if I could still recreate it or what would happen. The race itself was much different because it was one of the coldest years in Hellgate history. We were running through the night in the low teens, maybe even in the single digits, and it was just a battle to keep your water from not freezing and to stay warm. By the time the sun came up, it might have gotten up into the 20s or 30s, which seemed pleasant at the time, but it was never got really warm. As expected, the race, I was about an hour slower, not having the same base, and it was a good experience. It set me up for kicking into gear in 2017, and I hoped 2017, with finally pulling the trigger on 100, I now was in a position to start training hard and had that base from Hellgate. I knew pretty early on that I wanted to run 100, but I was pretty cautious about making that jump up. I had found 50 miles hard enough the first time I did it, and so I was scared of making the leap to doubling that distance. So I looked for long 100K races, and so having run a number of those, I felt both confident and scared. I felt 100 miles is still going to be a lot longer than those, and a lot more time on my feet. I knew what it was to run in those kinds of mountains. I knew what it is to run in those kinds of trails. I knew what it is to feel in your darkest moment and totally defeated and dead, and to come back and bounce back, to run through the dark at Hellgate. There wasn't much more I could do to get ready than that.
4, 3, 2.
The race starts in the dark with some road miles, and I wasn't feeling great from the beginning. Feeling anxiety throughout the first few road miles, and then you get punched in the face with a stiff climb up a mountain, and then you're running on a rocky ridge. So nothing really feels perfect off the start, but then the sun comes up and you've got this nice long descent into the first crude aid station at mile 12. You finally feel like you can, at least for me, I finally felt like I could run. I was enjoying myself then, and that's when the race started to click, I think. I still had to be conservative, stay behind people. I knew it was going to be a long day, but I was very happy at that point with the sun coming up to feel good and feel like I was, right about where I wanted to be. Coming down into 33 was sort of one of the first major milestones for me in terms of, what time was I going to hit? Where was I going to be? I sort of had a range of times that I thought would be reasonable. I was right roughly where I wanted to be, not more towards the back half of that range, which was fine with me. Still set me up for a sub-24 finish, I thought, and so I was happy with that. The rain's starting to come down, and I am starting to feel the first signs of sort of tightening up legs and the fatigue in the legs. So there was mixed feelings at that point. I'm right where I want to be. I've been running smart, but what's going to happen from here? What are the next 30 miles hold? What are the next 70 miles hold? Out of that mile 33 aid station, I felt a bit, because of those legs, I felt a little bit labored coming up that climb. It's a rocky climb, but it's mostly moderate grade for a while. I just felt like I just needed to keep chugging along, and I would start going aid station to aid station, and then moving through the clicking off miles, and just keep it moving. It's really kind of an amazing and interesting experience to have my dad at these races. He did them when I was a kid. Not all the same things. He never did 100, but he did 50s. He did tough mountain runs like the escarpment, and I grew up around that. Never really expected to follow in his footsteps, and never really had the strong desire to do it until later in my adulthood. But now, seeing him out there, having him, he knows what it involves. He knows what it takes to get ready, and he knows what you're going through when you come through the aid stations, and he wants to be there. He loves being out there, so it's a great source of support. Nice way to share the experience with him.
You managed that last stretch pretty nice. I think I got that.
Growing up hiking and then running in the Catskill Mountains, I'm always a little bit skeptical when someone tells me some mountain range is technical or something like that, or rocky. I mean, You can't get much more technical or rocky than the Catskills are. You know, I'm always kind of wondering, well, what's their standard for technical? Is it Catskills technical? You know, so that makes me feel prepared for anything it throws at me. Of course, I know that if it really does add up and has that much rocks, it's going to be a hard experience. So, you know, you get down there, the Virginia mountains are, in a lot of places, comparable. It's just rocky and not necessarily as steep in places, but you certainly hit plenty of those places that are just like running the Catskills. Well, 24 hours is historically associated with the 100-miler as a sort of a time goal. A lot of races award some special award for going sub 24, as Massanutten has a different belt buckle for 24 hours. I wanted something more than just finishing. So that was the next most reasonable goal. It turned out to be a pretty reasonable one because I snuck in 23 hours and 40-something minutes, so, you know. The initial moment, it's tough to describe the moment. I guess the initial moment of finishing, by that time you're so exhausted and so beaten down that it's just a relief to be done. A little bit of disbelief that it happened, a little bit of disbelief that you're there and now you can finally stop running, but it's hard to think about much else other than getting off your feet, getting warm, getting some food, stuff like that. Thanking the people that have helped you that far. It took a couple hours getting back to the place we were staying before sort of a lot of emotions sunk in about it, and I did start to get emotional a couple hours later and sort of a little more amazed and overwhelmed that I had finished what I had been working for several years and specifically for the past 5 months or so.